Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm Christine and today's video is about something I'm calling the long goodbye, and it is about cutting ties gradually during the ascension process. So what is the long goodbye? This is the term I'm using to describe weird, long drawn out situations that have come up. I don't know how else to describe it, manifested them to help me cut ties with people in my life. And usually these people have been in my life for a long time or they've been important in some other way. So they might have been friends, they might have been clients, they might have been family. I just want to point out that all of these situations were non-romantic situations. And one other thing I want to say real quick is I'm not talking about violence in relationships. I'm not a therapist. And so I do want to encourage you to get therapy and support from someone if you have issues around trauma or get some help escaping a situation with domestic violence. So there are I figured out there are many reasons why the long goodbye happens, and these are just some of my observations. The first one is if you have childhood trauma, you probably have sentimental ties to people who just aren't good for you and you don't know it. You probably didn't know that they programmed you to do what they wanted you to do, and you probably thought what they were doing was love or that it was normal. And this was me. And in all of these situations, I needed linear 3D time to see for myself that these people were manipulators. Now, these situations, they take a while. So with my mom, it took 3 years. With a client, it took 10 months. The third example, and I'm going to put these examples in some subsequent posts so that you can get an idea of how these unfolded. But I needed linear 3D time to reach the conclusion on my own that all the people pleasing in the world was not going to change them. Another reason, society as a whole is being liberated from codependent situations. And so even if you don't think of yourself as codependent, you have likely been unknowingly enmeshed in situations because you just thought that's what you were supposed to do, or because someone else was codependent and brought you in for the purpose of abusing you, like power trips. A lot of professions are full of narcissists and abusers, and, they seem to believe that even though they give you a paycheck, they are also entitled to abuse you and mess with your head. So these are often shitty situations like jobs or relationships where we have to stay there because of money or because we're related or some other sticky reason. We also just had a pandemic and many of us are still figuring things out. Another reason is because we have to go stair step by stair step in consciousness. We are remaining in our bodies, well, those of us that are staying for 5D are staying in our bodies. We're not dying, and our bodies need time to catch up. My favorite teacher, Denise LaFay, says that we absolutely have to go step by step because otherwise our bodies just couldn't handle the process. And so, because our bodies are in 3D, it makes sense that we need linear time for these situations to play out. So, in any kind of situation, the extended goodbye is a gift. And I know a lot of Ascension teachers seem like they want to sugarcoat the turd before they make you swallow it. But unfortunately, right, a lot of bad things turn out to be really good for us right now. This was something that was really hard for me to get used to. But the extended goodbye is really a gift because it gives you time to live the situations from your higher perspective. And when the situation, because it just has to play out, I mean, it has to play out because I'm going to tell you about that. You have an opportunity to practice non-codependent behaviors or rejecting behavior, standing up for yourself, and ultimately, you recognize that it doesn't matter what you do, the person's not going to change. So you might think it's business as usual with this person. You start noticing that something isn't right. You continue to do the things you used to do, but they stop working. So eventually you get the memo that you can't keep doing those things anymore because it makes you feel bad physically. Like I think I mentioned in another video, that dropping your vibration down can make you sick. And it takes you a little while to recover and bring your frequency back up. So often you start to notice that being around this person makes you feel bad. So you know you need to make changes, but ultimately the other person doesn't want to change, and conflict is usually the result. So over a period of time, things alternate between good and bad, hopeful, good, bad, hopeful, until eventually you realize that they're just stuck in a pattern themselves and they want to just keep doing things the way they're doing it. So you may try initially to have a conversation with them and explain to them and ask for their cooperation, but they don't want to do it. So at some point you just get absolutely sick of their shit, but at the same time you can't leave, or you aren't ready to leave for some other reason. So eventually, because you can see things from a higher perspective, because your vibration is increasing and theirs probably is not, eventually you figure out that the situation has to break down at some point because it's unsustainable. But while you're in that situation, there's time for other things to happen. So often this looks like settling up karma. You're preparing to remove this person from your life. But also, you're not just splitting away from them in this lifetime. This is forever. So if you've been stuck reincarnating with the same bunch of assholes and repeating the same situations and trying to resolve them but couldn't, this lifetime is the end of that. So you're probably not going to reincarnate with this person because you're done playing out old traumas and you're ready to graduate. So many of us are done. Now, I just want to point out that some of us were already done, but we came back to witness the ascension process. And so many of us incarnated into certain bloodlines to help disconnect them from ancestral trauma and bring it out into the open. So as you raise your frequency, you realize that things were never going to work out with the other person. They were using you possibly, but it worked out okay because you knew you were going to raise your frequency in this lifetime. So when I look back on some of the situations, especially with my mom, and then there was a situation with a client that came back, in retrospect, it just all seems predetermined. And when I can see it that way, I can relax and stop taking it personally. So you'll look back on things probably and realize that you were worried about nothing because it was all working out, but it really was upsetting probably before you realized what was happening. And that, to me, that's the benefit of this information, is that when you figure out what's going on, you can relax and see it from a higher perspective. Not only that, but you can settle up your karma. In other words, probably you might be getting a paycheck, you might get something, or you might recognize opportunities in the shitty situation. You know, the universe uses everything to squeeze out as much benefit as possible. So I would encourage you that when you finally realize that you're not going crazy, that this person's probably not going to change, and it's going to be okay, that you can use the situation to your benefit, not in a manipulative way, but I do think that settling up karma means that you are made whole in some way through the situation. Either you get money paid back, or you speak your mind, or you're the person that's delivering their karma and their consequences. I mean, consequences are kind of instant now. Another thing is that this asshole is helping you to move on. So they made things so uncomfortable for you, in case you forgot what you came here to do. And they probably knew before they came into this incarnation that they weren't going to evolve into 5D, so they need more time in 3D. but you're ready to move on, so it's time to separate from them. So the people, and also the people that are staying on the planet, are rearranging themselves into groups of similar frequencies for their next phase of life. I mean, some people are going to die and leave because 5D is too uncomfortable for them, and other people just are going to rearrange to be around other people who are like them for the next phase of their evolution. That is, if they're staying on the planet. But the bottom line is that we're all now free to be together with whoever we want for whatever reason we choose. We're not forced to stay with people because of shared trauma, because we're related, or because we need money. We're being liberated from these kinds of ties. So when you realize you're in the weird vortex of not being able to leave the situation, then what happens during that time? Well, you're saying what you need to say, you're practicing your new non-codependent behaviors like boundaries, which I call telling people to fuck off, because many of us never had the guts to do that. And there are a lot of other things that got rearranged in that time period. The other thing I've noticed is that these goodbyes, they don't leave you with trauma. You actually leave holding your head up. And that's the settling up karma thing. You're not financially devastated. You're not dealing with PTSD and cleaning up big messes because of these assholes. You'll probably be able to look back at the situation and feel good about how you showed up. You feel good about leaving whole. Now, you might take some losses, and they might be substantial, but usually you can recoup those, and I'll talk about that in another blog post. But in the meantime, when it all falls apart, chances are there's already a path made for you. It's like the easy way out, the path of least resistance, and it won't be super disruptive. So this is a summary of this process. I hope it helps you make sense of weird situations unfolding right now as we move deeper into the great separation. Now, just remember that the process is designed to be gradual and less traumatic. If you need support, please check out my services menu. You can also support the channel through subscribing, Cash App at 1212 Energy, or you can sign up for a $5 monthly subscription on my website, 1212 Energy. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back soon with part 2 because I have a lot more to talk about here. And we'll see you in the next video.